All right, welcome to our interview with official esports commentator and caster Brandon Smith. Brandon, how are you?
Doing very well. Thank you very much for having me, and I'm looking forward to hearing a bit more about what you guys are up to and the event that you've got planned.
Thank you for taking time out your busy schedule to talk to us. For those who don't know about you or know a little about you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, so you've given me a title that I probably don't deserve. In terms of in the shortest terms, my job that I do is I commentate over sort of FIFA tournaments, professional FIFA players around the world that compete in a handful of different tournaments for big prize money. And these guys are sort of like superstars in their own right. These are the best FIFA players in the world, and I'm lucky enough to voice some of those special moments that take place on broadcast with Sky Sports and BBC and on Twitch and YouTube, more sort of familiar platforms that we know nowadays. But yeah, that's a little bit about sort of what I do. I've been doing it for 4 or 5 years. I also did go to UCFB myself, and I studied multimedia sports journalism, and that's sort of where I got my first real sort of couple of steps into the esports industry. And then it was from there I went and developed and continued to grow in the industry. And touch wood, I'm still here, and fingers crossed I can still do this job for as long as possible.
Do you always envisage yourself going into the esports industry? Was it a hobby, or was it something like a long-term aspiration?
Yeah, so it was. I've always wanted. It was one of those, like I always played football. I've always loved football, but it got to a stage of what's the realistic chance of being a professional footballer in the nicest way. But it was a way I wanted to still be involved in that business and in the sport somehow. So at the time it was to do commentating on football. When I went up to Manchester and I went to the University of the Football Business, I was just doing commentary, volunteering at sort of National League games and doing podcasts and just trying to do anything that involved broadcasting and talking. And of course, I always heavily played FIFA, and that's always been something that I've always enjoyed. But for me, I never thought I'd be able to get into esports, just because I thought you needed to have 1 million subscribers on YouTube or hundreds of thousands of followers, or all of these things that I just didn't have. And then I just got an opportunity to commentate, and lucky enough, me and another former student, Richard Buckley, we went in as like a duo at the time, sort of classmates, and we were able to just create this opportunity out of absolutely nothing. And then before we knew it, we were commentating on all these tournaments. So yeah, I think I've always wanted to work in broadcasting. I've always wanted to be a commentator. I just didn't expect it to be maybe in the esports industry at the time, but I think I would prefer to stay here than go to the real world of football.
You cultivated a huge following, whether it be on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. Would you say that you being a commentator is a key success to it, or would you say it's you as a brand, your personality that's made that success and following?
Yeah, so when I first started commentating, I think I called myself the noob, which was awful. But it gets to a stage where you are right, you have to become like a bit of a brand or like a bit of a personality. And for me, I think social media, as much as it's, there's its downfalls to it, and don't get me wrong, there's, you can never look too deep into social media, but you need to have some sort of following or brand on there to sort of really help you in terms of getting jobs, and in terms of maybe getting, I don't know, brand deals or opportunities. And for me, it makes a lot of sense to try and capture that across all these different social media platforms, whether it's Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, whatever the platform. I think it's really important because not everybody uses all of those platforms. And I'm sure with TikTok especially, like the opportunity there is ridiculous in terms of the growth that people are having, the youth that are on it. And to be honest, I think it will just continue to skyrocket in terms of the future of that app. So I think it's just important. I think more FIFA players as well, not just commentators, but FIFA players and esports athletes need to understand that social media is so important of creating a brand, because it can help you really a long way down the line.
In your Facebook profile, you refer to yourself as the Gold 2 guy. For those who might not know about it, what exactly is Gold 2 guy?
Yeah, so again, you said it perfectly in terms of creating a brand and whatnot. But yeah, the Gold 2 gang is, if anyone's a FIFA player that is watching this or has heard of this, is that it's been something that I've kept going for 2 years or so now in Foot Champions, which is a mode you can play on FIFA every single weekend. You play 30 games of FIFA, and the point of it is that you try and get 30 wins. You know, the pro players get 30 out of 30, 17 wins out of the 30 is gold too. But for like 4 years, I could never get 20 wins, and like this was me like fully trying as well. So I just sort of nicknamed the Gold 2 gang as a thing, and I just went with it, and it's really taken off now. And again, it's just like a USP. It's like a unique selling point that a lot of people need to have as part of that brand as well. In terms of, I do a lot of content creation, so I stream on Facebook Gaming at the moment, and I think to have a sort of selling point there is really important. You know, pros have got it, other esports influencers, YouTubers, everyone's got their own sort of USP. So at the moment, it's Gold 2 gang for me, but I'm hoping to hit at least elite this year at some point. I reckon I can do it.
So would you say it's a sub-brand of yourself, because you interact regularly with viewers, whether it be on TikTok or Twitter? Is that something that's helped cultivate that following through that interaction?
Definitely. I think you've got to be relatable as well, which is really important. You know, being relatable. In the nicest way, not everybody hits 30 O's, not everybody hits 23 wins or becomes an elite FIFA player or an elite gamer in any game. So when there's someone out there that people can relate with, and they could be like, oh, I get the same as this guy, or I'm worse than this guy, maybe I can get better than him. I think it's good. And one thing that I do at the moment is I try and do loads of different challenges. So like I just try and prove to people that you don't need to have the god teams in FIFA to have fun on the game, or to have all the icons. You know, there's many other ways you can enjoy the game, whether you build a Manchester United team, or you build a bronze team, or you build an England team. There's all these different ways you can still enjoy the game. And that's what I'm all about at the end of the day. I'm not a rager. You won't catch me raging on the game. You won't catch me swearing and whatnot. I'm very much I just try and keep it positive, because at the end of the day, it is about having fun, and that's what video games should be about.
Congratulations on achieving a huge feat in obtaining a was that something you always wanted to do? You know, how did you feel about it?
So yeah, the Guinness World Record was a weird one. I think for me, I just thought to myself early this year, but this is before COVID. I'm glad I did it before COVID, because I don't think anyone knew what was happening this year. I just sort of thought to myself, how cool would it be to try and break a Guinness World Record at the time? And I was thinking to myself, how, you know, what could I do it on? How could I do it? So I was thinking to myself, you know, FIFA challenges, you know, there's someone already done longest time playing FIFA or this and that. And I just started trying to pull it apart. So, and I came up with, it's actually a new world record. So it's a brand new world record. So it's the most offline foot draft wins in 24 hours. So it was pretty much, I wouldn't say a guaranteed record. I had to hit over so many wins for it to be considered as a world record. But I'm sure there's people out there that have beaten it. But the thing that no one knows is I did it offline. So everyone keeps doing it online and saying that they've beaten it, when it's like, it's not really with the terms of service. So technically I'm still holding the world record. But no, it's just one of those things. Like, I just thought it'd be so cool to achieve world record. I did raise some money for two great charities alongside it, of cancer research and Young Minds for mental health. And that's what it was really about at the end of the day. But I just don't like doing the norm. I try and just mix things up a little bit, and I just think how cool it'd be to get a world record, and touch wood, somehow I've still got it.
Or having that, you know, another USP record, making yourself different, again, increasing your confidence yourself, not just a commentator, you've got other feats and records.
Oh, definitely. I think, as I told you before, I think I went through a stage about a year ago in terms of esports where I was like, I don't want to be known as just that FIFA commentator in the nicest way, because I think everyone's got a story to tell, everyone's got a personality at the end of the day. And I wanted to try and portray that personality in the best way possible. And for me, it was me just showcasing that I'm a bad FIFA player, and trying to just make a bit of fun out of it and have a bit of fun along the way of it. So I think it's really important. And I think anyone that is looking to go into esports or any sort of industry, you've got to just separate yourself from the rest of the pack, as cliche as it can sound. Whether that's with a USP, like a unique selling point, or just the brand that you portray, you know, try and do something a bit different, because, you know, a lot of the time everyone can do the same thing, and it can become very, very saturated and very difficult to sort of separate yourself from the rest.
Yeah, hi Brandon.
Hello, mate.
What is a typical week like for an esports commentator? I can imagine it's not a normal week for.
Yeah, it's not, yeah, it's different every week, which is refreshing for the job as well. I think it's refreshing circumstance. Sometimes there's not enough direction. That's the only downfall of the job. I think when you have a routine job like a Monday to Friday job or a 9 to 5, or so many hours a month, you know exactly when you're in, you know exactly when you're working. For me, I could have, for this month, for example, I've got quite a few shows that I'm doing with EA and England and PlayStation, but next month I could have absolutely nothing. So it's really weird, and at times it's difficult to. You go through stages of like motivation where you can lack it or you can really be up for it, because a lot of people don't know, but technically I'm a freelance commentator. So basically that means that when I get booked, that's when I work. So say if I had no bookings for like 3 months, I wouldn't work. Lucky enough, I've been able to create some different streams of income over the years that I can still support myself. But in terms of how it looks, weekends is normally when tournaments take place. So your Mondays, your Wednesdays, and sort of your average weekdays are normally pretty relaxed, where I can catch up on bits and bobs and do my other stuff, whether that's creating content, streaming on Facebook, or actually trying to live a normal life for at least a couple of days. But no, it's always changing. But again, I'm very grateful to even be able to call it a job, and I'm very grateful with the time off it gives you as well, this job, because although yes, it can be in bits and bobs, you can still enjoy some incredible opportunities and some time off, which is not regular in many jobs.
Yeah. What would be your long-term aspirations in esports? Like, do you envisage yourself commentating on different games or just sticking to FIFA?
Definitely. I think a lot of people sort of assume that the goal is to go into football, to go and commentate on Premier League matches, when in the nice way, it really isn't that. I think people just think that the esports and FIFA is like this really small thing, and that, like it's just people, there's still a stigma around esports, which will slowly break, I'm sure, in years to come. But I think a lot of people think that it is a short-term thing, and I want to go and commentate on football and match of the day. Of course, match of the day would be absolutely fantastic if you ever can get on that in the future. One thing I'd love to do, it'd be a huge ambition, but to be on the game of FIFA as a commentator would be absolutely ridiculous in, say, 5-10 years. That'd be mental. But also other esports titles like Rocket League, sort of interest me. I've done some work with tennis esports. Believe it or not, there's a couple of tennis esport titles out there. So I'm pretty much open. But for me, if I go into a game, my heart's got to be in that game. And at the moment, my heart has always solely been in FIFA, because it's a football simulation. Like if you went and throw me into Fortnite, we went to throw me into League of Legends, I could maybe do a job there. But it's not something that I'd hold my hands up and say I'm not truly passionate about at this moment in time, because at the end of the day, I'm lucky enough to commentate on the games that I really enjoy. And I don't think it'd be fair to the viewership as well that watch these games and are very passionate about them, if I wasn't coming in as educated as I should be, and as passionate as I should be as well.
Yeah. Have you had any experience actually commentating on professional football games other than just esport?
Yeah. So it's sort of really early into my career I did. And again, as I said, like it was non-league games. My local club is Bognor Regis Town FC. They were in the Conference South a couple of years ago, and they've been in the Conference Premier many years ago. But I used to commentate on them back in the day, alongside the likes of FC United of Manchester. I've done some bits down there, Curzon Ashton, and some other clubs up in Manchester. When I was there in my time, I did some sort of local commentary. But in terms of actual football commentary from that point onwards, it's mainly been in esports, to be honest, and mainly football. Again, though, I am completely open to it. One thing, again, I would love to try and do Sky Sports around the grounds or something like that. I'd love to give that a go and just see how that opportunity is, and how I'd get on in that space. So yeah, I've done some football commentary in the past, but I'm sort of just enjoying the ride at the moment, and I've been very lucky with the opportunities that I've had in this.
So touching on your England collaboration, how did it come about? Are national teams like now taking notice of how big the industry is?
Yeah, no, it's great. I think England needed to be in the space, and they have been in the space. You look across the rest of the nationalities, like I think Germany and Denmark and Portugal, I'd probably say your front three, maybe Spain as well, are sort of, or France, there's actually quite a few that are very keen in esports, because they realise the potential in it. They realise that they need to get hold of this young audience, this young demographic, which is enticed in YouTube and gaming and all these sort of enterprises now, that's where they're sort of addicted and they're attached to, and they have to try and pull those viewers in from somewhere else. So I think it's great that England entered the space. England technically have been in esports for sort of coming up to their third year in 2021. But we've done work before, me and Richard Buckley, in terms of we commentated on they call it the E-lines. So every year there's 2 E-lines for England. So 2 professional FIFA players that will represent England in tournaments. The main one is called the FIFA E-Nations Cup, which is a FIFA tournament for nations all around the world. Some serious money up for grabs, normally like $300,000 with, 2 players representing their nation, like national anthems being sung. It's on Sky Sports. It's a ridiculous event. Like the first time I went to it, I was like, is this actually real? It was absolutely ridiculous. But no, in terms of the England collaboration this time round, so basically they have got me and Richard on board as sort of ambassadors that will help create content. They've just launched a Twitch channel, so they want to be really heavily involved in that space, which is great for them. And they want to run, obviously, their E-Lines tournament, so they want to find 2 new England players, I believe. So I think that means that Tex and Tom could lose their position, or they might stay. It depends on how they get on. And then also building up to the E-Nations Cup, which is the big pinnacle event every single year. So delighted to be involved. I think if you can do anything for your country or your favourite football club, it's a huge achievement. And for me, it's still one of those that I can't really express how grateful I am to be involved with the opportunity of England.
Great. Tinashe, do you want to have any questions?
Yeah. With the lockdown and what's happened all this year, how do you think the esports industry has been affected? And has it been positive or negative?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's been positive, because in the nicest way, yes, this has been an awful year and a year that we will never forget. But for me, I lost about 10 to 15 like job bookings. Originally I was meant to be traveling to all these different places, and of course I fully understand why everything was cancelled and postponed, because that's how it should be. Health should always come first. But then I picked up all this other work that I never expected to get, in terms of where there was no football, where there was no actual sporting events taking place. Esports went into that position of how we're going to create content, how we're going to create entertainment, because what was happening was you was having something called the Premier League Invitation, where you had professional footballers from each Premier League football club, battle out in a massive FIFA tournament where the winner gets money for charity. It was on Sky Sports all weekend. Same with England. England hosted a tournament where all England footballers played against each other at FIFA to be like the so-called king of FIFA for the England team. So, and then you get all these celebrities getting involved in charity fundraisers and whatnot. So I think esports really took that center stage of being the source of entertainment for a really long time. So in my honest opinion, I think it has really benefited esports, and a lot of people that maybe had a stigma against it have had to sort of take a step back and go, well, this is actually maybe a bit better than I thought it was. It's not just people sitting on their bums for 12 hours a day and eating junk food and not really doing any exercise, because you've got these huge high profile celebrities doing it now. So overall, I think it was positive.
You and your commentary partner, Richard, have become like the leading FIFA commentators, working with brands such as Sky, BBC, and Premier League. When you started this journey, did you always think that you would get this far, or has it just become like a dream that just became a reality?
I think so. Before I went to university, again, this was 4 years ago now, I never knew that I would have this opportunity in esports, let alone meet someone like Richard. Obviously, Richard's from Barnsley. When you hear him commentate, you can tell on the accent that there's a bit of difference. I'm from Brighton, so I'm on the south coast, hence the southern sort of accent. But it was weird. Yeah, again, I've never met Richard before. I went to university, we met, and we just got on. And when we started commentating esports, I think I always say this, but when we first started commentating together, I said to Richard in the commentary, I was like, Cristiano Ronaldo, he's a fantastic player. Tell me about him. When he started like reeling off all these stats about how fast he is in FIFA, and it's like jumping stats and his shooting stats, and it was just like remarkable. And I was like, this guy, like, he knows his stuff. But in terms of the opportunities we got, I don't think, if we've been completely honest, we never thought we would get opportunities with Sky and in England and EA, because it was all sort of, yeah, as you said, it was a bit of a dream to work with these companies. And I think when you're so obsessed by like the process of it all, and we worked so hard for many years, and we still do now, you get all these opportunities with all these clubs and the Premier League and that, and it's just where you're working so much. I think that's one thing I would always say I would regret, is I don't enjoy the moments enough when you get to work with these companies, because you're so enticed on doing a good job, or what's next, or what's the next opportunity. But I'm sure one day I'll look back and be like, wow, like, what a ride it really was, in terms of the opportunities we've got. And yeah, it definitely has been a dream come true.
With your partnership with Sony, how did that opportunity arise?
Yeah, so PlayStation are heavily involved in sort of not just the FIFA space, but in the esports space, and not just across FIFA, across many other games like the fighting games, Mortal Kombat, Call of Duty. But FIFA is their biggest game in terms of that people watch and people read about and people play. I think last year there was something like 10.6 million people that were playing FIFA on the PlayStation 4 at one point, not long after the game came out on FIFA 20. So that was a really incredible stat. But they're very enticed in esports, so they sponsor like loads of EA Sports events. So when you sponsor all these events, you have to create content alongside that. And obviously the position that me and Richard were in at the time, they were like, these guys are a perfect fit. So me and Richard, we have our own sort of podcast show called Crossbar that runs every month. And then we also basically commentate, I should say, on any sort of FIFA tournament that takes place with Sony, which is like a monthly tournament at the moment called the Open Series. And again, that's a really nice, fruitful partnership. I was lucky to get myself a PS5 somehow, which is pretty much a boyhood dream to get a console sort of gifted to use. That is ridiculous. But yeah, PlayStation just really heavily involved in FIFA, and they luckily have enjoyed working with me and Richard, so to speak. And hopefully that one can roll on for many, many years to come.
Following the Sony PlayStation School Cup, do you believe we'll see younger children play and be involved with esports?
Yeah, so the PlayStation Schools Cup was an interesting one. Again, unfortunately, we're not working with them this year, but last year we got to work with them. And the way they work is they're just trying to, capture all these kids in school that, are maybe struggling to study, or maybe they're looking at opportunities down the line. We're talking sort of college here mainly, actually, I should say, not sort of primary school, sort of secondary school towards college. When you leave college, what opportunities are there out there? So around that campaign, there was the gaming side of it. So there was me and Richard and a famous YouTuber called Matt HD Gamer. So we were showing the opportunities and the jobs that you could get in the gaming world. There was also a freestyler there who was teaching you about the opportunities you can get in freestyle. There was a clothing design there, so you could like create your own kit, so opportunities in that. And then I think there was music too. So all these different opportunities that basically PlayStation Schools Cup are trying to showcase alongside their annual football tournament that runs for kids to represent their team in a football tournament is really, really important. So I definitely think it will entice people to get involved in gaming. And I think the point of that project was just to show people that there are more opportunities in gaming than just playing and being a competitor. There are more opportunities, a commentator, a host, a content creator. And I think it's a really good campaign, and I wish them the best for this year when it runs again.
I'll pass you on to Calvin.
Hi, Brandon, you right?
Hello, mate. You all right?
I'm good, thank you. Do you see bigger companies using esports as a form of marketing, whether it be sponsoring a stream or a competition, or perhaps themselves investing in esports infrastructure?
Definitely. I think the obvious play there is that esports is attracting a demographic that can't really be attained anywhere else at the moment, because as boring and as cliche as it sounds, is that our age group now, even us in our sort of 20s or just before 20s, is that we're not reading newspapers anymore, we're not listening on the radio, we're not really watching TV as much, we're watching Netflix, we're on our phones all the time. We're just in this digital age where we watch Twitch and YouTube. That's our TV in the nicest way. So 100% you're going to see brands. That's why you've seen so many non-endemic brands get involved in the space. And we're talking the likes of McDonald's to BMW to, phone companies, just to name a few, because they want to capture this sort of sweet demographic spot of, I think, anywhere between 13 to 24, I think it could be, that are obviously so enticed in this space. And that's why you will see more and more brands get involved, and they'll sponsor streamers, they'll sponsor YouTubers, they'll sponsor FIFA players, because they want to entice and capture this young audience, which is just very difficult, or should say very hard to find at the moment.
Yeah, it's fine. As we all know, esports has been growing year after year, and some predicted that isolation measures could provide an extra boost to the industry. Have you benefited from this, and will the rise continue?
Yeah, I think obviously the current climate and the lockdowns and the isolations have meant that gaming is a way to socialize, a nice way. I've been in many party chats with my friends where I've not been able to see them for months on end. We've played pro clubs and Call of Duties, and I'm sure everyone else has also done something similar to that. I think 100%, the gaming level or the gaming rate of people playing would have 100% gone through the roof, because all you can do is watch TV, jump on Skype or Zoom, or literally jump on your console. I think those are your three options within the current guidelines. So yes, it's definitely benefited. There's obviously more people that have bought consoles. I'm sure the sales rate of PS5s and Xbox Series X's have gone through the roof, as they normally would. And I just think in an overall view of it, I think esports has benefited this year. I think one of the few positives to come out is that I definitely think this industry's benefited.
Yeah. Last question from me. Lower league clubs have a huge presence, especially in the UK esports industry, with teams such as #United having players. Is this something Premier League clubs should take notice of and follow?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a tournament that takes place every year called the E-Premier League. And that is a tournament that runs with all 20 football clubs in the Premier League having a Xbox player and a PlayStation player. However, that's just for a one-off tournament, which takes place in around about March every year. So that'll be taking place next year. And that's an opportunity for basically those clubs to find their best fans who play FIFA and to have a massive FIFA tournament that's broadcast on Sky Sports. And touchwood, hopefully I'll be commentating on that one next year. But to answer your question, I think there's Manchester City, there's Wolves, and there's West Ham currently involved in esports full time. There was Southampton, but they've just pulled out. So there's clubs already doing it, but I don't know why all the others aren't doing it. I know some have got other contracts that conflict with other football games, such as PES. And also, I don't think many clubs are glued up in terms of the opportunity that's there at the moment, in terms of they have got a huge opportunity, like a club such as, just off the top of my head, any club in the Premier League, a club even like Brighton. Brighton are pretty keen at the moment about getting into esports, but even some club like Sheffield United, the nicest way, they have got an opportunity if they sign a couple of FIFA players who stream on Twitch or make content on their channels. They've got a great opportunity to entice younger fans to buy season tickets when we get back to normal times, to buy shirts of that club, to watch their content, to spend their money in that club. And that's the bigger picture of it. At the end of the day, it's to attract younger fans into those clubs. And that's at the end of the day, FIFA esports and competitive FIFA is a marketing strategy to just entice younger fans and a younger demographic into clubs and brands and sponsorships. So hopefully in the future, I would love to see at least 5 to 10 clubs involved full time.
Thank you. That's it from me. Over to Aaron.
Just random, we've got a few questions from social media. If we ask that.
Sorry, say that again.
Just a few questions from social media.
Yeah.
First question is, other than having a passion for the game, what are the key elements that make a good esports commentator, the traits that you need to succeed in the industry?
That's a great question. I think obviously number one, you've got to learn the game, which I know you sort of already said in the post anyway. You've got to learn the game to a crisp, because at the end of the day, you are the guy who's the expert, so to speak, or you're the guy that's going to have the knowledge. I think preparation's always the number one key. I know many commentators will tell you that. Just prepare on your tournament. What's the prize pot? How many days is your tournament? Who's playing in it? How have they got to the tournament? And alongside that, the storytelling factor of esports, in terms of you are telling the stories of these players, and you're trying to showcase them as the Cristiano Ronaldos and the Messis of the space. I remember, I'm sure everyone knows Tex as a player who now plays for Fnatic. I remember when he jumped onto the scene, he was 16 years of age. He played in Barcelona in his first ever FIFA tournament. And I was lucky to be part of that and to develop this incredible story of this 16-year-old that nobody knew, that went from 500 followers to 50,000 followers on Twitter in 24 hours. And he bagged, an incredible prize pot of $20,000 or $30,000 in a day. So that was ridiculous. And now look at him now, he's earned over $600,000 in prize money. He plays for Fnatic, a huge esports organization. He's just absolutely just dominating the scene, and he's like the superstar now of FIFA esports. So yeah, I mean, you've got to be able to tell, you've got to be a storyteller. You've got to prepare. We've also just got to have that excitement as well. You know, you've got to be picture yourself listening to a commentator. You want to be enticed. You want to be sort of drawn to your screen in the nicest way. So excitement's a big part of it too. And just, I think sometimes just being honest as well. Like, just be as honest as you can as a commentator when maybe something happens in the game. It's something that I learned quite early on to my esports career. There was certain things that maybe happened in the game, like a bug or a glitch. And sometimes maybe you could be too excited about what's actually happened, and the community comes out and says, why have you not said that's a bad goal, or why have you not said that's a glitch in the game, or something like that. So try and be as honest as you can with what you're looking at, and sort of what the community expects. I mean, those are a couple of tips I'd say.
Another question is, what are the biggest perks of being an esports commentator, other than the huge platform and engagement you get online?
I think just the travel side of it. I think before I even got into esports, I just said to myself, I would love to be able to commentate and just like travel, whether it's to Iceland or to, Singapore, America. I just would love to just travel and just pick up all these different experiences along the way. Yes, you're working when you go on a lot of these venues, but there is downtime to go and explore certain cities and countries, which is amazing. And to get to do that sort of all paid for as well is ridiculous in terms of the opportunity that is there. So traveling for me is the number one. And number two, I think just meeting a lot of like-minded people is great. You've got people there that are just as passionate about you are about esports. So those are my the two big things that again are a real sort of draw to commentate on esports.
Do you think esports should become an Olympic event, especially considering the viewership it gets, the traction it gets, and engagements?
Say that again, sorry.
Do you think that esports should be an Olympic event, considering the engagements and viewership?
So it's an interesting question, that, because if there wasn't COVID this year, there was going to be esports at the Olympics. There was going to be Rocket League and Street Fighter, I think, at the Olympic Games in Tokyo. And there's always been a big debate about, does the Olympics need esports? Or does esports need the Olympics? The Olympics is the biggest sporting event. It gets millions upon millions of people that watch it, probably in the billions. Esports gets millions and millions on top of that, probably billions in terms of that. So they're both very equal in their viewership. It's just how are they really going to assist each other? So I think it's a crossover that should happen. And I think FIFA sits in a very good position because the Olympics got its own values. So you'll never see a Call of Duty at the Olympics. You'll never see probably a Fortnite at the Olympics because they're shooting games where people are being killed, and some of them are a bit, glory and there's blood everywhere. So those are games you'll never see at the Olympics. But for the games that do work, like Rocket Leagues and FIFA and sports games, I definitely think there is a very good sort of interest point there in terms of crossing over both worlds. And it's one that I definitely think should happen in the future, and I hope it will happen in the future.
And just one question. Someone wants to know, what camera setup do you use for your stream?
What camera?
Yeah.
Is that for playing or is that for filming?
Both, I guess.
Okay, yeah, it's always a big question. What camera to use? So on FIFA, I play with a default or a classic camera. I'm not too sure. It's either or. And just filming, it's just a basic C920 Logitech camera. They're pretty cheap to get, and they're very, very reliable.
Thank you, Brandon. That's all the questions.
No problem.
Be sure to check out Brandon on social media, support him on Facebook and his streaming site, and help him reach past the gold one.
Cheers, guys.